In this lesson, we'll discuss some common network security concepts. First, we'll look at the CIA Triad. Then we'll compare internal and external threats, and we'll end the lesson by discussing vulnerabilities and exploits. There will always be tension in network administration between confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Each of these areas is important, and finding the right balance is key to having a secure network that also provides accessibility. These three security goals are combined in what's called the CIA Triad. Let's first talk about confidentiality. Confidentiality, or what we usually just call privacy, is a set of practices that protects data from unauthorized access. These measures can include strong passwords, two-factor authentication, encryption, biometric verification, access control lists, and physical controls. Let's look at an example. Kate uses the same password for her social media account, her bank account, her company laptop, and her company network login. Kate's social media account is hacked, and the attacker discovers her password. Since Kate used the same password for all her logins, the hacker now has access to her bank account, her company laptop, and the network login. Because of her access to the network, the hacker also has access to the company database. The database's confidentiality in this example has now been compromised. Now, let's look at integrity. Integrity refers to data resources being protected from unauthorized manipulation, ensuring that everything's secure, accurate, and trustworthy. This includes data at rest and data in transit. Data integrity protection includes user access policies, digital signatures, hashing, encryption, version control, error detection software, separation of duties, and employee training. Each of these steps can help safeguard data. For example, John needs to send a file that contains sensitive information to his company's headquarters. To ensure that data integrity is maintained during transit, John uses a digital signature. A digital signature uses a hashing process that includes encryption keys to allow only the recipient to open or access the file. The third part of our CIA Triad is availability. Availability refers to timely access to one's own data. Availability can be disrupted by a variety of things like hardware issues, software updates, network maintenance, or cyber attacks. These can result in downtime or sluggish processing. Ways to offer consistent availability include hardware redundancy, backup services, updates to software and systems, failover, disaster recovery, and network monitoring. Having your network functioning well, but also securely, is part of a good information security policy. But now let's talk about actual threats to a network. Threats generally fall into two categories: external and internal. External threats are the ones that usually come to mind first. They include cyber attacks such as malware, viruses, Trojan horses, and fileless attacks. Countermeasures for these incorporate strong firewalls, anti-malware and antivirus software, and intrusion detection systems. Most security experts, though, agree that the greatest threat to sensitive information on a network comes from internal threats. Because insiders have authorized access to resources, they're already past many of the security steps in place. This makes the threats more difficult to detect and prevent. These threats can be intentional, such as from a disgruntled employee, but they're often unintentional actions. For example, an employee could lose a company laptop, attach wrong files, leave their computer unattended when logged in, or log into a secure network from a public Wi-Fi connection. Some employees are simply complacent about security matters and don't do things like create new passwords. Many external threats also have an internal element, such as an phishing attack where someone within the network clicks on a malicious link sent in an email, or when an attacker takes advantage of an insider's lack of awareness. Employee training is the most important prevention against insider threats, but even trained employees can make mistakes. There's also the possibility of employees with ill intent, so it's essential to have more safeguards in place than just employee training. These safeguards can include applying the principle of least privilege, enforcing robust passwords, internal segmentation, database monitoring, and using log management platforms to monitor all logs. It even includes vetting new employees and creating policies for when employees with security privileges exit the company. Now, let's discuss vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities are areas on a network that, if taken advantage of, could result in a security breach. The weaknesses could be found in software, hardware, policies, or human actions. Exploitations can include unauthorized access to systems, running malicious code, altering files, installing malicious software, and stealing or changing data. Since 1999, the MITRE Corporation has published a list of known vulnerabilities and exposures called the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposure List, or CVE list. This was created to provide a centralized resource for known vulnerabilities that would categorize, number, and name things for easy identification later. There are over 100 organizations that are considered CVE numbering authorities, or CNAs. These CNAs identify and issue CVE ID numbers to the vulnerabilities on their own products, or there are third parties that can issue the numbers as well. These numbered issues are shared for publication and research. Not all vulnerabilities that are assigned numbers become entries on the CVE list. There is a process the issues go through to determine if they should be placed on the list and scored. The Common Vulnerability Scoring System, or CVSS, is a set of open standards used to assess the risk level of a vulnerability. The scores for the entries on the CVE list can help network administrators know how to prioritize their resources to fix vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities that are discovered and exploited before they're known publicly are called zero-day attacks. The timeline is that when a vulnerability exists, it's generally discovered by a researcher. The vendor then creates a fix and releases a signature. Within this development cycle is a window of opportunity for an attacker to exploit, and attackers love to take advantage of these vulnerabilities because it gives them an advantage over the developers. That's it for this lesson. In this lesson, we discussed the need for balance between confidentiality, integrity, and availability in the CIA Triad. Then we compared external and internal threats. After that, we went over vulnerability resources, including the CVE list and CVSS, which are used to evaluate risk levels. And we ended the lesson discussing zero-day attack exploits. Being familiar with these security concepts will help you know how to approach network issues while providing timely availability to your organization.